Hey everybody, welcome back. Well, we have a lot to go over. We have a lot of earnings that came out. Actually, there's an industrial company that came out this evening. I thought NVDA would be the big dog, and it is. But what happened with this industrial company, we really need to go over. It's really important for people to get this and how this plays out. I don't think a lot of people are familiar with these kinds of moves, so we're going to talk about it in some detail. Now, very simply, I just want to go through this. We're just in a range. Now, you have some economic data that's supposed to come out tomorrow that could start affecting this range, but we really haven't seen anything affect it yet. We have not seen anything affect it at all. But you have manufacturing coming out tomorrow. You're going to want to watch manufacturing. We want it under 50. Now, this is S&P Global Manufacturing. It's not ISM, but it's still important. So we're going to want to watch that. Then we're going to have the global composite, which is what it means, a composite of both U.S. and services. And that gets 51.2. So what we want to do here is we want to see these under 50. If we get it, we get it. If we don't, we don't. We also have to watch new home sales. I had something really weird happen today. And if you have an answer for it, I'm all ears and I'll walk you through it. With Toll Brothers, I didn't really understand it, but I'm going to be curious what you guys think about it. So please drop it in the comments. 4-week, 8-week T-bills. And then you have the 10-year tips. These matter. You saw the 20-year today, so it matters. We're on our 4,700th Fed speaker of the week. Bostic, I think, has spoken 47 times in the past 48 hours. And I think everyone's kind of over it, which is what if you're in the room and you're in the community, I've already said it, where I think we're going to go through fatigue, and we're there. People just really don't care what they have to say anymore. It's like the boy that cried wolf. We have inflation. We don't have inflation. We might raise rates. We might cut rates. You know, blue is red, red is blue. People are just over it. I know I certainly am. So we're not seeing their weight carry. It just is not carrying any more weight. It's not having the effect that they want. They seem to be trying to control the market with their words, and people are over it. I think what's most important for us to get about the S&P is, see how we're just sitting in this range since Wednesday, May 15th? No matter what happens, we're in this range. So let me give you an example of what I mean by this. So here's copper futures, right? Copper futures fall out of bed. Doesn't matter, does it? Why? ES is still just staying right in that range. So we're rotating. Copper falls, don't worry about it. XLK is going to come in and lead the way. If energy was leading, now energy's not leading. Energy's falling out of the way. Doesn't matter. Something else is coming in the way. We're seeing constant rotation. Now you're seeing it with the XLC names. And I want to spend a little time on this before I go into the next topic. I missed this, and I don't know if someone else picked it up, but I'm sure somebody did. But do you know for the month of May, we have not had one red day in the XLC? Not one red day. And I don't know how I missed it. Maybe sometimes I miss the forest through the trees, but I missed this. Literally, not one red day on the XLC since May 1st. I can't remember the last time I've ever seen that. I mean, it's just outright accumulation. Now, for those that don't know, before we get into NVIDIA, the next topic, we did talk about ELF and snow as well. But before we get to the next topic, so if we go out there and go, well, what's Meta doing? And you see how Meta, well, it's not Meta. And then you go, all right, well, then it's Google is another big dog. Well, Google keeps going. Disclaimer, I have a position in Google right now. But Google's been on that tear, right? Well, what about Netflix? Netflix has been a monster, but it's still having those days. So then you start going through it and go like, well, what about Charter? And it's a combination of all the names in there. You are getting some leading names, but they are the large cap names. And you look at like FNGU, which is, these are 3X, the top 10 names, the FANG names, right? And that's at all-time highs right now. We'll talk about where this is probably all going because NVIDIA, spoiler alert, crushed. I know, shocked. But I think we need to talk about this. I'm going to talk about NVIDIA in great detail Saturday. So make sure you subscribe. I'm going to go through it tonight so that it's actionable. But I really there's so many lessons about the news that came out, how they tried to play us with news and everything out there. And it's really important for people to get this. So we're going to spend a lot of time giving lessons that are actionable for other things on Saturday. You're not going to want to miss Saturday's video. It's going to be a good one. I think they're all good, frankly, but I think Saturdays are better. I have more time to put those together. But so you start going through this and you're talking about rotation. I was just shocked by this. Shocked, I tell you. So, but this is also neat. Like crude's collapsing. Now, why is crude collapsing important? If crude collapses as it's doing, why would it do that? Well, demand, right? And what's interesting about that too is when you look at the tankers are switching. So that means they're still utilizing the tankers. Some people just use boat, right? But I like just looking at TNK and I like looking at STNG because I like looking at the very specific tankers because sometimes if you look at boat, I don't really want to care what ZIM's doing. Although it did hold right there, didn't it? But let's get back off the tangents and get to it. So why do we care what crude's doing? Because if crude's doing this, and we'll stay on this tangent because this is important, Well, then if crude drops and then gas drops, what's that mean for us? Well, that means CPI is going to come down. If crude drops and gas drops, CPI comes down, period. End of story. It's not debatable. It's just fact. It's just the way it is. And I've gone through this numerous times. So we want to keep an eye on this, because does that mean we're setting up for a good CPI, PPI number right into next release into a July FOMC meeting? The minutes today were absolutely pointless and meant nothing. And just to kind of put that in perspective, we're going to jump right back to where we started. Did we even move today? Did we even do anything? Not really. Kind of pointless to even talk about, isn't it? And I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time on it. We're going to talk about the NQ for a moment here, and just the fact that you have your little doji here and you're setting up to take all-time highs. And really, let's just jump into the names. Especially, I need to get into NVIDIA because of what happened. So you're going to see my 10,000 levels here because we were trading it in the room after hours. I was on the call. That's why this one was late. And then I had another call after that wasn't related to NVIDIA. It doesn't matter. But anyway, I was just late because I had to go through all the news before I even went to put this video together, just so I make sure you have everything you need for tomorrow. Couple key things. Number one, 10-for-1 stock split, right? Let's just drop it all in right now. I'm not going to have time to edit all this for obvious reasons, but let's just drop it all in right now and get to the headlines and just jump into it. All right, 10-for-1 stock split. That's huge. The dividend was kind of funny. Like, they increased their dividend. Increases quarterly dividend to 1 penny. So post split, okay. It's better than getting kicked in the shins, but it is what it is. But for me, the revenue guidance was through the roof, and I'm going to show you an easy way to understand this. GAAP operating expense of $4 billion now sees non-GAAP expenses of 2.8. The quarterly dividend shoes. The revenue of $28 billion for the second quarter is higher than anyone on the street. Just to be clear, that revenue is higher than anyone on the street as far as what their guidance is. The estimate was 26.6. The highest estimate on the street was 27, and that was Goldman, who was 36% higher than everyone else. I want to say that again. So 26.6, they're at 28. Okay, on the numbers, if you aggregate all the numbers together, right, the average, Goldman was 36% higher. I'm telling you this because tomorrow what it means is that the majority of investment banks have to take their numbers up. They don't have a choice. Whether they take their targets up with it remains to be seen. My assessment of this is that they're going to have to take them up. I'm going to show you a really back of envelope way to do this, and I think it's going to annoy a bunch of people. But you see the 612 to 559. If you took 612, right, and you just took that number, which is really the wrong way to do it, you times it by 4, you get 24. And then people will say, well, if you grow linearly, you're doing this. You're not growing linearly, for one, right? We all know that with NVIDIA. It's not growing linearly. It's hit at all-time highs. It's now in the 4-digit club, right? You're at 6, and then you're here, and you were at 5 on earnings, and now you were here, and you were at 4, right? You see what's happening to it, and you were at 2. So what are they doing? They went from 2.7 last August, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and now they're at 6. Okay, that's 100% earnings growth in 4 quarters. Okay, it's 100% earnings growth on NVIDIA. It's funny, in March 2023, I said this company was going to be bigger than Apple, and people thought this was a fad. This is just getting started. I would do yourselves a favor, and I will get more into this on Saturday. You need to listen to tonight's conference call. Just go to their website, listen to it. You want to do yourself a favor, because not only that, but they actually tell you on the call the other names that you need to be looking at and why. That'll tell you what's moving tomorrow and what's moving tomorrow after hours. You can save yourself an inordinate amount of time and not listening to Freddy Fingers on Twitter, and just do yourself a favor and get some learning. But let me show you the easiest way for you to understand this besides the 10-for-1 split and what's happening here. Demand is through the roof. The integration's going better than expected from product line to product line. There's 2 products, Hopper, Blackwell. People were worried about the integration. Integration's going very well, better than expected. Listen to the call. Why I want to show this is you see where your E is here, 495 here, and 726 here. Picture shifting all these up, okay? So if you're shifting all these up a year, which is essentially what happened tonight, then you're going to achieve these targets much sooner than possible. That's really what happened tonight. Earnings were so big, and the growth that they're projecting is shifting everything up again, because they're beating every quarter. Not only they're beating the guidance that they give, but they're then beating that by 10%. And you have to understand that. So they gave like 26.6 was what we were looking for. They come in at 28. And so next quarter, if they beat by 30, they didn't just beat by 28 to 30, they beat by the 26, which everybody thought. So you're constantly moving up, right? And so when you see fiscal year consensus of 37, and that's out to 27. Well, you're up to that on 26 right now. Okay, so this is getting closer. You're actually on 26, and actually coming up on these numbers, these are actually starting to get closer and closer to 40. And that's pretty impressive when you see this. Now, one of the key things that you keep hearing about this company over and over again, and I just want to drop this down. I showed this months ago, but we're going to just pop this in real quick. And I'm going to spend more time on this. I keep hearing how expensive that NVIDIA is. Over and over, it's so expensive, okay? This is NVIDIA trading at 13 times or 17%. It's 3-year median on next 12 months of PE. Okay, this is a piece put up by Goldman, and then they're using FactSet data. So it goes from 2017 to date. And what they're telling you is the average PE of NVIDIA over the 3 years is this median line, which is right here. You're right here, next 12 months. All right. You're not even remote. And now this is actually, what's funny about this is this. Earnings are growing so fast that the PE is not really moving. The PE is actually dropping. And this is what's so interesting. Remember when NVIDIA went from 300 to 500? The PE was actually dropping while that was happening. That's no longer happening, but you're not even at average. And I think that's really important. And NVIDIA is trading at a 36% premium to our coverage on this space, well below its historical mean of 160%. So usually it's trading at like 2x or 3x the norm of the group. Not anymore. Now it's only 36%. If it was doing that, it'd be up here. So you're at 1x instead of 2.5x. Couple things about this. If you were to look at this and say you're supposed to trade at the 3-year average, which is 45, and people say, well, you shouldn't be up that high. 40 times earnings, 45 puts you at 2,000, right? Okay, no. People say, no, that's not realistic. So what you're going to do is you're going to say 30 times 40 puts you at 1,200, right? Just follow me for a second, because that's actually ridiculous. Because what you're actually saying is, I understand that you're growing faster than 30%, but it's too high for me and I can't handle it. Therefore, I'm going to give you a discount to your growth rate. So you're actually buying NVIDIA cheaper than its growth rate. And people are telling you that the stock's too high. Okay, I've been hearing the stock's too high since we started buying the stock back. I'm spending time with this on purpose. Let's clean all this off, because I really want you to get this concept. See, a lot of people, when they show these videos or run this stuff, they don't explain the stool, right? And I want to go through it. You have the macro leg, you have the fundamental leg, and you have the technical leg. Okay, macro is going to tell you what. Okay, fundamentals is going to tell you who. Technicals are going to tell you when, right? If you think about it that way, and there's your stool. If you think about it that way, the macro is going to rule the world, right? And why? Because if inflation is so expensive that a cheeseburger is $47, then the cost of what you can afford is going to change. Just stay with me. If the fundamentals are growing so fast, right, that they're going to change the technicals. Now, sometimes the technicals are so good that people will just buy the stock, right? But when it broke out here, on that graph I just showed you, and you can go back to this. When you look at this, and to me it's just absolutely fascinating, from here to here the PE dropped, right? From here to here the PE actually dropped. It didn't break above its PE until January, right? So just think about that for a minute. And this whole time people are telling you it's too expensive. You've tripled, and people are telling you too expensive, and it's still below the norm. There was a line on the conference call from this analyst tonight, and it just made me laugh because I was thinking something very similar. He said, in 25 years of covering semiconductors, I've never seen anything like this. He's like, just the scale. He's like, I've never seen anything like it. So when you start to hear that stuff, and this is why you should learn to listen to conference calls and what you're looking for, you know what these analysts and how bullish they're going to be tomorrow. No one's going to come out. No, you can watch the stock at 4 o'clock tomorrow in the morning and just watch what happens in Asia. But it's very clear what's going to happen here tomorrow with the investment banks. Now, up, down, split, no split. You do what you want, but I'm going to run this again, and they make this very much clearer than I have with all the data I just threw out. So I'm going to give you the headlines again. 26 billion, okay, up from 18% from fourth quarter, up 262% from a year ago. So just so we're clear, they're growing 20% or 18% quarter over quarter. Remember when I showed you 100% from year over year? The revs are up 262 year over year, and people are complaining that it's got a 30 or 40 PE. It's nonsense. Record revenue data center 22.6 up 427. Quarter from quarter 23%. 10 for 1 stock split, and now you're getting a penny. Yay. It's really important to get this, guys, okay? Because what this will do is this is going to lead you to all the other names. So if you're in the community, you already know this because we have this whole list put together. And Dell's something that we're already in, but Dell's going to hit all-time highs. AVGO is going to probably break out as well. You have to go through these names. SMCI was moving. I'm not sure if that's going to have the same kind of move. We're in that a little cheaper. But I'll tell you what is going to fly tomorrow, in my opinion, is Taiwan Semi. You need to build. They made it so clear. And then you get into all the other chips like Micron And I thought this was a really interesting part too. Did you see what Analog Devices did today? You might want to watch this because the way it's being explained to me is you're going to need these companies as the build out continues. I could literally spend an hour just on this topic and trying to educate people on this. It could be a whole video, but this kind of stuff is absolutely fascinating. And I've been saying this for some time, been saying it literally now, I think it's almost 15, 16 months. These cycles, they come around like once every decade or two. You know, I've only seen these cycles probably 2 or 3 times in my lifetime. It's not like you're going to get another NVIDIA. Like if you miss this one, like I always say, oh, if you miss the trade, you can get back in. If you're not understanding this cycle and the AI cycle, it's going to literally be like .com. The only difference to me of AI versus .com, to be quite honest, is that AI is probably not going to drop the same way that .com did. They'll have boom and bust cycles, but it's not going to be the same. And I can explain that and why if you want in another video. I can't get into it tonight, but comment below if you want me to touch base on that, and I will do it on Saturday. Let's jump into some other names. So my worst trade of the night was I actually shorted ELF. And I think it's important for me to just bring up every once in a while, you're going to have swings and misses, right? Did NVIDIA make up for it? Tenfold. It doesn't matter. You still have your hits and misses, right? So I shorted this tonight, did not work. Numbers were actually decent, but they guided lower. And it looks to me like it's a washout, and now you're at that wash period. And quite frankly, nobody cares. Maybe the guide down was not as bad as expected, and therefore this is what we're seeing. It is what it is. But I would watch this tomorrow because look at what happened after hours. I mean, the trade candidly did not work when I shorted it. But if you just look at how you're setting up right here, and once you flipped here, you kind of know your hose. But I held out a little bit longer because it was a half position, and then it just got to the point where like, this is getting silly. But if you're doing this after hours, what are you going to do tomorrow, right? Like it was constant. If you think about it, after that 5-minute bar, honestly, it was just constant buying. So if that means that you're washed out, does that mean Alta's washed out? Because look what Alta was doing after hours. Now this is small after hours. But again, does that mean that this is washed out? Does that mean that ELF is washed out? You get to a point sometimes with these names where that's it. Now, what you might see as well, this is how I get into trouble thinking. There he goes again, thinking. But what got me was, this is almost like exhaustion. Like you start looking at Lulu and you realize that Lulu's coming out May 30th, right? You have the gap down, then you have the other gap down. I mean, we just lost a lot here. Are we getting to that point where we are getting washed out? Now, what I like to do with these kinds of names to look, I'll start with RSI and just start going, okay. And I got some really good trades to walk through of FSL. I want to walk through this. One of the things that was brought up, and I really appreciate this, it was very helpful, go over concepts over and over and over again. Stop bringing up new concepts. Introduce new concepts, but please go over the existing concepts over and over. So the first thing I like to do is just look at the RSI and go, am I seeing any sign of this slowing down? And quite frankly, no, I'm falling off a cliff. So I'm not really seeing anything there that's slowing down, am I? I can't really even say I have a divergence yet because I'm falling off a cliff. So we can't say that. All right, fast forward. Now, when we look at this, what could we say and what could we do, right? We could look at this and we could say, okay, this is something really significant that I have to pay attention to. Do I want to pay attention to this? What do I want to do with it? I want to see what they do because there's a couple things here. Now, you remember I shorted Starbucks and I made some money here, but it basically covered my loss when I broke out here. And now it's starting to set up. So are we washed out of XLY names? I don't have an answer, but if you start looking at Nike, it didn't break down, did it? So you just start looking at them and going, do they think the consumer is getting better? I don't have an answer to that. And that's certainly something we're going to watch. I'd be remiss in not talking about snow. Snow missed and the guide was okay, but it was okay. It wasn't awful. Now, I actually think Snow could trade up tomorrow. I think some of these other names are going to trade up tomorrow, specifically because of NVIDIA. I have an entire list of names. But I think it's really important to get this and say that you really have to pay attention to what is linked to NVIDIA and what names are linked there. I don't know if we're going to make that leap with Snow. I think there's some leap there, but you start looking at like names like Arete. I'm not sure why we're down $6 tonight. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me why we're down there when you're seeing names like, Dell just absolutely rip after hours and Taiwan Semi and all these other names lift. Probably going to see Lam lift tomorrow too, right? That looks like you're finally going to get over those wicks. That might be something for you to watch tomorrow as well. And then we start looking at the NASDAQ. Now, what happens Thursday, Friday, going into that 3-day weekend? We'll see tomorrow. We're going to play it by ear. My hope in you listening to my voice and the time that I'm spending on this is that you take the time to watch the conference call on the video. If you take nothing else from this so far, should have taken a lot from this so far, but if you take nothing else from it, please spend the time to do that. There's also a great conference with Michael Dell and Jensen on Bloomberg, and I recommend you watch that too. Now, DuPont, I told you we were going to get kind of crazy here, but DuPont about a decade ago, I think it was 13 or 14, Nelson Peltz, who's an activist, tried to break this company up, and they fought him and they fought him, and they ran ads and they ran billboards, and he's going to break the company up and he's going to do awful, awful things to it. And they fought him and they won. And now they're doing exactly what he wanted them to do 10 years later, which is split the company into 3 parts. Now, when you split a company up into 3 parts, and I know that you're not going to know this because you're not a boomer, and I'm not a boomer either. And nothing wrong with being a boomer. But when you split a company into 3 parts, you think about the Baby Bells and when they split them up. When you think about when they split Rockefeller up into the Exxons of the world and the Chevrons of the world, you need to pay attention to these. These are long-term things that you want to pay attention to. They are going to split this into 3 publicly traded companies. This is not something that you buy and you kind of trade for like $1 or $2. This is something you want to do some research on. One of these 3 pieces is their growth engine. Something else is going to be the dumpster fire floating down the river. What you do is you buy the stock. I'll just walk you through how this works out. You buy the stock, okay? You find out what the gem is because some CEO is going to spin off with the gem and someone's going to be traveling in the dumpster fire down the river. You let the dumpster fire go down the river. You get out of that, you sell that, and you buy the one that's the gem. A great example of this is eBay. So when the evil icon, it made him out to be like this super evil guy. I'll just walk you through this. It's, I actually find this stuff so fascinating. But when you look at eBay, right? Okay, here's eBay. And then we're just going to overlay a little company called PayPal to it, right? And then what we're going to do is just go and take a look at this over the past, well, if you went back here, it's not going to work, right? Because it's been out so long. So let's just do the spin-off so you can see from the spin-off. You look at this from the spin-off, look at the opportunity that you had. Now, I don't even know where you're at now. You might be even now because they've just ran it to the ground. But look at the opportunity that you had since that spin-off. It was just a blowout for decades. And then since then, they really have, I guess, too much competition. They really haven't been able to get it together. But at this point, you're still basically break even. I think you might even still be up a little bit. That doesn't really look like it. If I do this with it, you're actually out if you go back to 18. But look at the opportunity that you had on these spinoffs. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy if you catch the right one. The difference between from like saying from here and you just looked at something like this, between 126% to 15%, it's tenfold at one point, not even counting like the big moves. Of course, you're going to have your ups and downs with any company, but you always want to pay attention to that. So these spinoffs can just be absolute monsters, and there's certainly things that you're going to want to pay attention to. So for that reason, I would strongly suggest you do a little bit of homework, and especially if you're trying to look for something a little longer term and seeing how it goes. These kinds of trades can be just massive if you catch them right and you have the ability and the wherewithal to sit with them. That's it.